A presidential term refers to the specific amount of time that a president-elect can hold presidency before he/she is elected again by the American people. After the 22nd Amendment, the president can only run up to 2 terms in office with a total of 10 years as president. When the country was first instituted, there was actually no formal declaration that prohibited the amount of terms that a president could run, except for the fact that each term in office would last for 4 years. The origins of the 2-term limit for every president can be seen through the actions of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, who both served 2 terms in office. Thomas Jefferson believed that having 2 terms limited the power of any individual person and would also prevent the possibility of a tyranny. It would not be until the presidency of FDR that discussions over a 2-term limit would emerge again. During that period, Americans were going through a multitude of extraordinary events, and so were scared to change leadership in a time of crisis. FDR would end up being elected 4 terms in office while holding office for 12 years, prompting talks of a possible presidential tyranny and an amendment that limits the number of terms one could be president. As a result, the 22nd Amendment was ratified, which limited the president to 2 terms and allowed for a total of 10 years in office. The line of succession refers to the sequential list of government officials who are to assume the powers of the president given that the presidential seat is vacant. At the very beginning, only the vice president could succeed the president given that the presidential seat was vacant. If both the president and vice president were unable to perform their presidential duties, then Congress could pass laws pertaining to succession. Debates about the line of succession quickly escalated during 1791. During this time, many argued who should have followed the vice president in the line of succession. Some wanted the Secretary of State to follow, and others wanted the leader of the Senate to follow. The debates would eventually be compromised in the Presidential Succession Act of 1792 and 1886, which placed the President's cabinet and the leaders of Congress in the line of succession. The 20th Amendment would be monumental towards the line of succession as it reaffirms the succession of the vice president if the president-elect is unable to perform his/her presidential duties. It also gives power to Congress to pass additional legislation to resolve the succession of the presidency if neither the president or vice president is able to hold office.
When President Barack Obama said, "I think if I ran, I could win, but I can't," he was talking about presidential term limits. The fact that all presidents are now restricted to serving 2 terms. But why is that? There's absolutely no mention of term limits in the original Constitution. It was only because Washington refused to run for re-election after his 2nd term that it became an unwritten rule for presidents thereafter. Of course, not every president liked it. Some even tried to extend their time in office, like Ulysses S. Grant. He attempted to come back after sitting out a term, but didn't even manage to win the Republican nomination. Theodore Roosevelt ran for a 3rd term as president, but lost to Woodrow Wilson. Over the decades, Congress tried 270 times to create presidential term limits. Then, in 1941, Franklin Delano Roosevelt became the first and only president to serve 3 terms. As if that wasn't enough, he won a 4th term. That was the final straw for Congress. In 1951, the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution setting a 2-term limit was ratified. Regardless of whether you think they prevent tyranny or limit democracy, presidential term limits are here and are unlikely to change anytime soon.